Hey friends, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Yud Ches, Daf 118 of Masechta Yevamos, friends. We talk about different cases of where women are claiming that their husbands are dead. Let's go weiter. So we're on, and we're going to finish the 15th parak of Masechta Yevamos, which means that tomorrow we start the 16th and final parak of Masechta Yevamos. We only got 5 daf left of Masechta Yevamos, friends. We are really getting close. Friends, daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, and the Mishnah towards the bottom of the page. Achas omeres meis v'achas omeres lo meis. So you have a conflict between saris. Right? You have two co-wives. One says that the husband is gestorben, and one says he's alive. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? We're actually going to move on to a new Masechta soon, and we're not going to be talking every day about who's the one who died. This one's saying dead, this one's saying alive. Ruvain died, Shimon died, Levi died, married the sister. We're going to get past that stuff. It's kind of insane. Alright. So one co-wife says dead, one co-wife says alive. Alright. Zoshomer meis, so the one who says that he's dead, Wellwood. So Tinase, so if he was dispatched to Wellwood, so then she can get remarried. Visito ksubaso, she can collect her ksube. V'zoshomer lo meis, lo tinase v'lo tito ksubaso. And the co-wife who says that he's alive, so then she cannot get remarried and she cannot collect her ksuba. Achas umeres meis v'achas umeres nero. If one co-wife says, right, Sarah says he's dead, Rivka says he was killed, right? So Sarah says he died, Rivka says he was killed. So Meir says, well, since they have conflicting claims, one is that he's died, the other one is that he was killed. So Meir says we can't, right? We throw him in the garbage. Lo yunosu, neither one can get remarried. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon omrim, whereas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon say, look, look, at the end of the day, both Sarah and Rivka are saying that he's in Wellwood, so Memela they can both get remarried. Eid Omer Meis ve'Eid Omer lo Meis. If one witness says he's dead and one witness says he's alive, Isha Omer is Meis, Visha Omer is lo Meis. One woman says he's dead, the other woman says he's alive, and that can even include tsars, can even include co-wives. Okay, fine. Okay, we'll have to see how this comes up in the Gemara. She cannot get remarried. Now you might be thinking, what was it, yesterday or the day before, where we saw the opinion of Ula, who says that one, was it 3 days ago already? That one, or 4 days ago? Where did we see this? I don't know. 5 days ago? Where did we see? No, that can't be. Was it yesterday? Where did we see that opinion of Ula? Wow, I can't remember. Oh, no, it was yesterday. Yeah, of course. That, Ula says that, right, we trust one witness as two, right? So shouldn't we say that, we should trust the first person who says that he's dead? But, that would be a Bezdin decided, if one person comes and says he's dead, and Bezdin says that, okay, so we could treat it as if he's dead, so then the other person won't contradict that. But here it was where both of them came, one says dead, one says alive, and Bezdin had not yet made a decision, so then we would say that we cannot assume that they are dead, and they cannot get remarried. Taima de Amra lo meis ha ishtika tinase. If we look at the Mishnah, what did the Mishnah say? I'm reading from the beginning of the Mishnah. So we say that, well, if Sarah and Rivka are co-wives, if Sarah says that the husband Ruvain is dead, and Rivka says no, he's alive, so then Sarah can get remarried and she gets her ksubah. Rivka cannot get remarried and she of course does not get her ksubah. Now, the Gemara wants to imply that's because Sarah says dead, Rivka says alive. What if Sarah said dead and Rivka kept quiet? Sounds like if Sarah says dead, Rivka keeps quiet, Rivka should also be able to get remarried. Right? Taima de Amr lo meis. The reason why Rivka cannot get remarried is because she says Ruvain's alive. Ha ishtika, but if she would have kept quiet, tinase, she would be able to get remarried just like Sarah could. Ha ein Sarah mi'ida lechaverta. But I thought we had said, I think also yesterday, that one co-wife cannot testify for another co-wife. So how could Rivka get remarried based on the testimony of Sarah? Lo meis itzrichale. No, so the chiddush is really for lo meis, right? The fact, no. If Sarah says that Reuven's dead and Rivka keeps quiet, she would not be able to get remarried based on the testimony of Sarah because one co-wife cannot testify for the other one. However, there's a chiddush here because when Rivka says he's alive, really maybe she's not telling the truth. Maybe Rivka knows that Reuven is dead and she's only saying she's alive to kind of mess over Sarah, right? Rivka is saying that he's alive in the hope that, well, then Sarah won't be able to get remarried because he's alive. But really, she's not telling the truth, and really she knows that he's dead, and maybe she should be able to get remarried because we can assume that she's not telling the truth, and that really he's dead, right? So, lo meis itzrichale. So, the chiddush is actually that when, right, the chiddush is that the Mishnah says that when Rivka says that Reuven is alive, so based on that testimony, she's not allowed to get remarried. I may have thought to say, Hamayis. Rivka knows that he's dead. But the Ka'amr lo meis, and the only reason why she's saying that he's alive is l'kilkula l'tzara hu dekamichavna, only to mess over Sarah, who's getting remarried based on the fact that he's dead, and comes Rivka to say, no, he's alive. And if that has negative implications for Rivka also, that if by Rivka saying that he's alive, then it means that she also can't get remarried and she can have other issues, right? But nonetheless, but she's saying like Shimshon, like when Shimshon brought down the building on all the Philistines and he was killed along with them, so he went down with the rest of them. So she's basically saying, I'm going to bring down Sarah, even if it means that I'm going to go down too. So I might think that we can assume that Rivka is not telling the truth, and therefore she should be able to get remarried. Kamash Malan, that if she says that Reuven is alive, she cannot get remarried because we treat it as though he is alive. However, Sarah can get remarried because Sarah says that he's dead. Achas omeres meis v'chulei. So if one had said that, right, if Sarah says that he died and Rivka says he was killed, so Reb Meir says that their testimonies are contradictory, and therefore neither one can get remarried. Now, v'liflog Reb Meir b'reisha. Why doesn't Reb Meir also argue in the first part, right? When we said that when Sarah says that Reuven is dead and Rivka says that Reuven is alive, Sarah can get remarried, Rivka cannot. Reb Meir doesn't say anything there. But when Sarah says he died and Rivka says he was killed, all of a sudden Reb Meir says, well, they contradict each other, neither one can get remarried. Why doesn't Reb Meir also argue in the first part? V'liflog Reb Meir b'reisha, Omer Belazar, b'machlokas shnuya v'Reb Yehuda v'Reb Shimoni. So says Reb Belazar, look, the first part of the Mishnah is not according to everybody. It's specifically according to Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon. Where Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon had said later in the Mishnah that when Sarah says that Reuven died and Rivka says that Reuven was killed, so Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon say, look, at the end of the day, the co-wives do not disqualify one another, and at the end of the day, they're both saying that he's dead, so they can get remarried. So also the Reisha, where it says that the testimony of the Tzara doesn't disqualify the Sarah, the testimony of Rivka doesn't disqualify Sarah, is also Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon. Right, so again, so Amar Reb Elazar says Reb Elazar machloka shnuya Reb Yehuda Reb Shimoni, that the Reisha is not according to everybody. It's the opinion of Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon. Reb Yochanan Amar, whereas Reb Yochanan says Afilu Teim Reb Meir, you can even say that the Reisha is Reb Meir. So why doesn't he argue there and disqualify the testimony when Sarah says that Reuven's dead and Rivka says he's alive? B'ha Afilu Reb Meir Modeh because in this case, even Reb Meir would admit D'chol lo meis be'edus isha lav hakosha he, that when it comes to lo meis, right, that if Sarah says he's dead and Rivka says he's not dead, so that would not actually be considered a hakosha. That would not be considered a contradiction. Meaning, when Sarah says he died and Rivka says he was killed, that's a contradiction. But if Sarah says that he died and Rivka says he's alive, that wouldn't be considered a contradiction. A contradiction that would disqualify the testimony, disqualify the testimony of Sarah. But 1 second. Tanan, 1 second. Wait, where am I? But Tanan, Eid Omer Meis, Eid Omer Lo Meis. We learned in our Mishnah that if one witness says that Reuven is dead, the other one says he's alive. Isha Omeris Meis, Isha Omeris Lo Meis. And if a woman says that he's dead and a woman says that he is alive, Sareza Lo Tinose. So then she's unable to get married. So I understand according to Reb Elazar, so that would be the opinion of Reb Meir, right? So according to Reb Elazar, the Reisha where it says that if Sarah says that he's dead and Rivka says he's alive, and we say that Sarah can get remarried, Rivka cannot get remarried. So if we say that that's Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, well then how do you understand the end of the Mishnah where it says that if one woman says dead and the other one says alive, and that could be any woman, even co-wives, so then they cannot get remarried, well then that can't be Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, that is Reb Meir. However, El Reb Yochanan Kasha, according to Reb Yochanan, who says that the Reisha can even be Reb Meir, well then how could he be saying in the first part of the Mishnah that if Sarah says dead and Rivka says alive, Sarah can get remarried, Rivka can't, but then how could he then be saying at the end of the Mishnah that if Sarah says dead and Rivka says alive, neither one can get remarried? So Kasha, it's a Kasha and Reb Yochanan, right? Reb Yochanan who says that the first part of the Mishnah is Reb Meir, but then how can you understand the last part of the Mishnah, which also seems to be Reb Meir and are contradictory, but according to Reb Elazar, the first part of the Mishnah is Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, whereas the last part of the Mishnah is Reb Meir. Fine. It says the Mishnah, new Mishnah, so Sarah goes with her husband Ruvain to travel someplace, and she comes back and she says, Meis Baile, and she says that her husband is dead. So Tinase v'tito ksubasa, so she can get remarried and get her ksuba, but v'tsarasa asura. However, if there was a co-wife, right? So if there was Rivka, so meaning Sarah and Ruvain went traveling someplace, Rivka stayed home. Sarah comes back and says, "Look, Ruvain's dead." So Sarah can get remarried and gets her ksuba, but Rivka can't get remarried based on the testimony of her co-wife Sarah. Now, an afkamina of this is that says Reb Tarfon, look, if Rivka is unable to get married because we're assuming, right, because we completely disqualify the ability of, or discredit the ability of Sarah to testify on behalf of her co-wife Rivka, well then if we're really ignoring the testimony of Sarah vis-a-vis Rivka, so then we have to assume that Reuven is alive, and if Reuven's alive and he's a Kohen, so then Rivka would be able to continue eating truma, even if she's a Bas Yisrael. Whereas Rabbi Akiva Omer, Ein zo derech motzias midaver. No, that isn't the responsible thing to do. Ajite asur li nase v'asur milecho b'truma. Right? Rather says Rabbi Akiva, look, at the end of the day, it's a suffix. Right? Yeah, we can't trust Sarah vis-a-vis Rivka, but at the same time, we can't completely ignore it either. Right? So therefore, yes, Rivka cannot get remarried, but at the same time, she won't be able to eat truma because maybe Reuven is dead. Nobody's seen him. Omra meis baili v'acharkach meis chami. If Sarah comes home and says that, I guess she went traveling with her husband and her father-in-law, she comes home and says that my husband died and then my father-in-law died. So Tinasa Visito Ksubasa. So Sarah just said that her husband-in-law is dead. Sarah just said that her husband is dead. So she can get remarried and she can collect her ksubah. Vachamosa Asura, but her mother-in-law would be Asura because she cannot testify on behalf of her mother-in-law. Hoysa Bas Yisrael lekoyin. Now if the mother-in-law was a Bas Yisrael and the father-in-law was a koyin, so if we're saying that she's unable to get remarried because we're assuming that he's alive, so Tocha B'Truma de Rabbi Tarfon, so she can continue eating Truma, according to Rabbi Tarfon, whereas Rabbi Kiva Omer, Ein zo derech motzios midei avere, that is not really the responsible thing to do here. Ajte asura linase v'asur melecha b'truma. The way to make sure that she's not going to be doing any averes is that she cannot get remarried, because maybe her husband, the father-in-law, is still alive. But at the same time, she'd be unable to eat truma because maybe he's dead and she's a Bas Yisrael, which means that she's not allowed to eat truma. Okay, so we see in both instances, Reb Tarfon says that if she's not allowed to get remarried, then she would be able to continue eating truma if he's a kohen and she's a Bas Yisrael. Whereas Rabbi Kiva says no, we have to be concerned. Yes, she's unable to get married, but also she cannot continue eating truma, because we do have to be concerned that maybe he is take dead. Utzricha, and we need both cases of the co-wife as well as the mother-in-law. The itmar hach kamaisa, because if we would only mention the co-wife, right, that when Sarah comes home and says that Reuven is dead, so Sarah can get remarried, the co-wife Rivka cannot. Behaka Amr Reb Tarfon, I would say that is where we completely ignore the testimony of Sarah and say and assume that Reuven is alive, and therefore Rivka can continue eating truma. Mishum Ditzaira de Gufa, because co-wives, have the sort of resentment that they have for each other runs deep, right? And that if Reuven's married to Sarah and Rivka, the real nafkamin is, if Reuven's spending the night with Sarah, Rivka might not appreciate that. And therefore, there's like a resentment there that runs deep, and therefore we really do have to be concerned that Sarah is out to get Rivka, and therefore in that case, we completely discredit the testimony of Sarah, and we assume that actually Reuven is alive, and that's why Reb Tarfon is willing to say that Rivka can even continue eating truma. But vis-a-vis her mother-in-law, which, the resentment isn't as deep. It doesn't necessarily affect her day to day much. So then maybe we wouldn't completely throw it in the garbage, and maybe there Rabbi Kiva Reb Tarfon would agree with Rabbi Kiva that the mother-in-law should not be eating truma, right? Ema modile Rabbi Kiva. Maybe Reb Tarfon would agree with Rabbi Kiva that she should not be eating truma because maybe the daughter-in-law is telling the truth. And if we only mention the case of the mother-in-law, that is where Rabbi Kiva says that she would be unable to eat truma because maybe Sarah is telling the truth. But maybe with regard to the co-wives, where the resentment runs deeper, so maybe Rabbi Kiva would agree with Rabbi Tarfon that we completely discredit the testimony of Sarah, and Rivka would be able to continue eating truma. Tzricha, that's why we need both cases. That in both cases there's this machlokas between Rabbi Kiva and Reb Tarfon. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, halacha ki Reb Tarfon. The Rav Yehuda says the name of Shmuel that the halacha is like Reb Tarfon, that Rivka can continue eating truma as well as the mother-in-law can continue eating truma. Amar Abaye afonanami tanino. Abaye says that we also have a Mishnah that says Niten li ben b'mdinas hayom meiz b'ni v'achakach baili, that if you have Sarah and Reuven are married and they don't have any children. Reuven has a brother, Shimon, who would be a potential Yavam if Reuven dies. They go, right, Sarah and Reuven go traveling someplace. Sarah comes back and says, look, while we were away I had a baby, but the baby died. So basically she left with the chazaka that if Reuven died, she would have to do Yibum with Shimon. And she comes back and says, look, I had a baby, but the baby died, which means I still have to do Yibum with Shimon. So Ne'emenes, in that case, she's believed because nothing really changed. She left with the chazaka that she has to do Yibum, and she came back with the chazaka that she has to do Yibum. But if she comes back and says that I had a child, and my husband died first, and then my son died, which means that we have to be, which means that, if that was true, that the husband died and then the son died, well, at the time that the husband died, there was a child, which means that she's pater from Yibum. So, she's not believed. And we say that we have to be concerned, that we have to question whether there really was a baby, and if the baby died after the husband died, and therefore she at least does chalitza. Shma Mina. And we say that, yeah, we are concerned about what she says, but not what her co-wife might say. But if whatever the co-wife says, we completely disregard, like Reb Tarfon, and that is why Rivka would continue to eat trumah, because we completely discredit the testimony of Sarah, and we assume that Reuven is alive. Oh, so now we get to an arguably interesting Mishnah. Kiddush achas mechomesh noshim. So if you have a fellow, he's mekadesh one of 5 women, and guess what? V'nudeh is kiddush, and of course, he doesn't know which one. Okay, sounds like an interesting case. Usually, okay, alright, fine. Okay, whatever. Kolachas omeris osi kiddush, and then each one is claiming that it was her. Interesting case. Right? You have a fellow, he's mekadesh, one of 5 women, not sure which one, and all of them says it was her. Nosin get l'cholachas v'achas, or he gives a get to each and every one of them to make sure that whoever it is divorced. Umaniach ksube b'neinu mistalik to Reb Tarfon. And what about in terms of ksube? If they get divorced, he has to pay her the ksube. Alright, so take, let's say, right, they're all basulas, so take 100 mono, 200 mono, put it in the middle, and then run for it. That's what Tarfon's opinion. Rabbi Akiva Omer, ein zo derech motziosu midei avere, ad shitin ger chsuba l'cholachas v'achas. Rabbi Akiva says no, he would have to give a get and a ksuba to all 5. Gazal echod michamisha, if a fellow stole from one of 5 people, ve'nudeh me'eze gazal, but he doesn't know who he stole from, kol echod ve'echod omer osi gazal, and each one says, you stole from me. Maniach gizela b'neinu mistalik to Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon says, look, take the thing that was stolen, put it in the middle, and run for it. Rabbi Akiva Omer, ein zo derech motziasu midei avere, ad she'yishalem l'chol echod ve'echod, whereas Rabbi Akiva says, no, that is not enough, he has to pay each and every one of them. Now, Kiddush katoni, ba lo katoni, gozal katoni, lokach lo katoni. The Gemara points out that the Mishnah in the Reisha is talking about that this fellow was mekadesh a woman, he betrothed her, but not that he slept with her. Slept with her is more extreme, it's more physical. And the Seifa is talking about where he stole from somebody, which is more extreme than, let's say, buying from something, right? From somebody. Let's say he bought something from one of 5 people. He's not sure who he bought it from, and now he has to pay them for what he bought, for the purchase, and he's not sure which one it is. That's less extreme than stealing from someone. So, Kiddush katani. So the Mishnah says that yes, there's this machlokus between Reb Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva when it comes to betrothing a woman. Ba'al lo katani. It doesn't say that there's a machlokus when if he would sleep with one of 5 women. Gazal lo katani, gazal katani, lokach lo katani. We also say that there's a machlokas when he stole from one of 5 people and he's not sure which one. But we didn't say that there's a machlokas when he purchased something from one of 5 people and he's not sure who he purchased from and he's not sure who to pay. Money must be lo tanakam of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Now, who is the author of our Mishnah? It sounds like it's like neither Reb Shimon ben Elazar nor like the Tanakh. The Tanya is learned by Reb Shimon ben Elazar. It says Reb Shimon ben Elazar lo nechel Reb Tarfon Rabbi Akiva al shekidesh achas michomesh noshim v'nudeh ezo kiddush. That says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that actually in the situation where he was mikadesh, he betrothed one of 5 women, and he's not sure which one. So actually, there's no machlokas there. Both Reb Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva agree that in that case, he can just leave the ksube there and say, you women figure it out. Shemaniach ksube b'neinu mistalik. He puts the ksube there and says, look, I'm out of here. Al manechleku, where's the machlokas? Al sheba'al. Where the machlokas is when he slept with one of the 5 and he's not sure which one. So that is where Rabbi Akiva would say that he has to pay each and every one of them. Rabbi Tarfon says that just like by Kiddush, he just leaves the ksuba there and runs for it and lets them figure it out. Rabbi Akiva whereas Rabbi Akiva says they'd have to pay each and every one of them. Okay, so our Mishnah said that by betrothing there's a machlokas, whereas over here we say no, by betrothing everyone agrees that he can just leave the money, leave the ksuba there and run. Lo nechleku Reb Tarfon Rabbi Akiva al shelokach mekach mechamisha b'nei adam, v'enu yodea meize mein lokach. And then Reb Shimon ben Elazar continues and says that Reb Tarfon and Reb Akiva both agree when it comes to if he purchased something from one of 5 people and he's not sure from whom he purchased, that even Rabbi Akiva would agree that you can just, take the price of the purchase, leave it there, and run for it and say, you guys figure out who's who. The machlokes is when he stole, like our Mishnah says, when he stole from one of 5. The Reb Tarfon says that you just leave the stolen object there and run for it. And Rabbi Akiva says that you have to return the lost object to each, you have to return at least the money of the lost object to each and every person. So we see that according to Shimon ben Elazar, our Mishnah had said that there's a machlokas both by Mikadesh and by Gezela. So Shimon ben Elazar agrees that there's machlokas by Gezela, but he says that when it comes to Kiddushin, everyone would agree that you can just leave the money there. But our Mishnah said that it's machlokas, right? And from the fact that, and let's go weiter, Midikamer Shimon ben Elazar, Bekidesh v'lokach lo plige, and from the fact that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that by Mikadesh and by Lokeach, right, by betrothing and by purchasing, lo pligi, there's no machlokas, mechlad tanakama sover plige, implying that in those cases, by Lokach and Mikadesh, there is a machlokas, and it's by Gezela and by Baal that there is no machlokas. So, money, who is this like? Tanakame, if our Mishnah is like Tanakame, lisne Kidesh v'Lokach, then it should say, if it's like the Tanakame, then it should say that the machlokas is by Mikadesh as well as by Lokeach. You have Shimon ben Elazar, right? But our Mishnah says that the machlokas is by Mekadesh and by Gezel. You have Shimon ben Elazar, and if it's Shimon ben Elazar, let's say Baal v'Gazel. Say that the machlokas is by Baal v'Gazel, but we say it's by Mekadesh v'Gazel. So says the Gemara, the Olam of Shimon ben Elazar. So says the Gemara, look, really our Mishnah is Reb Shimon ben Elazar, umay Kidesh b'biyah. When it says in our Mishnah that if a fellow was Mekadesh, a woman, he's not sure who, it means he was Mekadesh b'biyah. So basically what the Mishnah is saying is that in the case of Bia and in the case of Gezel, there's a machlokas, which is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Tana Kidesh, Lodiach HaKochot to Rabbi Akiva. And when it says Kidesh, right, that we had learned earlier in Daf Nun Beis that Rav would give malchus to people who are Mekadesh b'Bia, right? We do not encourage being Mekadesh b'Bia, better to be Mekadesh with money. So what we're saying is that if he's Mekadesh b'Bia, which is only Asher Midir right, it's discouraged Midir. It shows the Odiach HaKochot to Rabbi Akiva, it shows the strength of Rabbi Akiva's position, that Afagav Disur D'Rabbanan Avad Konis, that even though he's only doing an Isur D'Rabbanan by being Mekadesh b'Bia, which the rabbis don't want you to do, nonetheless, Rabbi Akiva still says he has to pay each and every one of them. Tana Gezel, and it teaches by Gezela, which is the Oraisa, L'Odiach HaKochot to Reb Tarfon, to teach you the strength of the opinion, the koach of the opinion of Reb Tarfon, that Afagav the Isur the Oraisa Avad Lo Konis. The Reb Tarfon knows that even though he's doing an Isur D'Oraisa, he's stealing, still he says all he has to do is leave the amount that he stole in the middle and run for it. Doesn't have to pay everybody back even though it's an Isur D'Oraisa. Alright. Sounds like interesting stuff, right? Let's go weiter. Final Mishnah third Mishnah of the day, or his fourth Mishnah of the day? 1, 2, 3, fourth Mishnah of the day, final Mishnah in the 15th parak of Masechta Yevamos. Ha'isha she'alcha hi uvayla l'medinas hayam, a woman who, right, so Sarah traveled with her husband Ruvain to some place, uvnai moim, and guess who they took around? Lucky guy. They took their son. Uvas v'amra, and she comes back and she says, Meis baile v'achar kach meis b'ni. Terrible tragedy. She comes back and says, her husband's gestorben and her son's gestorben. So in that case, when she left, right, right? So in that case, when she left with a chazaka that she would not have to do yibum, right? She was married, she had a child, she would not have to do yibum in the event that her husband dies. She says that her husband died, and then her son died, which means at the time that her husband died, she still had a child, so she doesn't have to do yibum. So she left with a chazaka that she did not have to do yibum. When she comes back, she's still maintaining that she does not have to do yibum. So ne'emenes, she's believed. However, meiz b'ni v'achar kach meiz baili, but if she says that her son died, and then only afterwards her husband died, which means that at the time that her husband died, her husband didn't have any children, which means that she would have to do yibum. Eino ne'emenes, we don't actually believe her, We're concerned that maybe she is only saying that because she's attracted to her brother-in-law, she would right in order to do yibum with him. So therefore, we cannot completely trust her. So we say, look, just do chalitza. Do not do yibum. Nitan li ben b'mdina sayam. Let's say when she left on this trip, she did not have a child. So she and her husband went on a trip, there were no children, which means that the chazaka is that if her husband would die, then she would have to do yibum. Ve'amr, and she comes back and says, meis b'ni v'chakach meis baili, that, she left and there were no children. Then she says, look, I gave birth to a child when we were on the trip, but then the child died and then my husband died, which means still at the time that the husband died childless. So she left with a chazaka that she would have to do yibum, and she still has a chazaka that she would have to do yibum. So ne'emenes. So then she is believed. Meis baile v'chakach meis b'ni. But if she says that she gave birth to a child on this trip, and then her husband died, and when the husband died, the child was still alive, so she does not have to do yibum, and then the child died, she's not believed because maybe she's just trying to get out of yibum. But we still do have to be concerned. And therefore, and we have to be concerned, and we say, we have to be concerned that maybe it's true that the child did die after the husband, and she's parted from him. So we say, look, just do chalitza, and just do chalitza, but don't do yibum. Nitan li yavim b'mdina sayam. If she left with her husband on a trip, when she left, she didn't have any children, but she also didn't have any brother-in-laws. She comes back and says, look, while I was away, my mother-in-law gave birth to a yingel, to a baby boy. And then she says, look, but my husband died and then my brother-in-law also died. Or my brother-in-law died and then my husband died. Ne'emenes, she is believed, right? So basically when she left, she didn't have any children, but she also didn't have any brother-in-laws. And when she comes back, she's basically saying that she doesn't have any children, she doesn't have any brother-in-law, so she is believed. Now, if she left with her husband and her yavam, right, and her brother-in-law, now the chazaka is that if her husband dies, then she would have to do yibum with her brother-in-law. She says, look, my husband died and then my brother-in-law died. If she says that her brother-in-law died and then her husband died, either way, she's not believed. A woman is not believed to say that her brother-in-law died so that she'll be able to marry whoever she wants. And she's not believed to say that her sister died so that she'd be able to marry her brother-in-law. A man is not believed to say that his brother died so that he'll be able to marry his brother's wife. And he's also not believed to say that his own wife died so that he can marry his sister-in-law. Friends, let's move on. Says the Gemara, Ba'amine Rav Nachman. Rav asked an interesting kasha from Rav Nachman. Hamazake ged leishto b'makom yovam mahu. Friends, do you hear the kasha? It's an interesting kasha. That there's a concept of zochen l'adam shelo b'fanav. I think maybe I've shared with you before that there was a rabbi once who asked me to pay the electric bill for his synagogue. And I said, fine, no problem. So I paid the electric bill. And then afterwards he said that he also added some to the bill. So he charged me more than I committed to because he said, Zachin l'adam shelo b'fanav. You're allowed to merit to a person not in his presence. So therefore, he unbeknownst to me, gave me the merit of giving more tzedakah. So I thought that was an interesting take on the concept. But al koponim, Zachin l'adam shelo b'fanav. You can cause somebody merit not in his presence. And therefore, so, okay, let's say you have a husband and a wife who are married, right? And they're going to get divorced. And the wife makes a messenger, and the messenger is going to accept the get on her behalf. Okay, so the husband can give the get to her messenger, and that's that. Now, here's the interesting case. What if the woman does not, set up a messenger? The husband sets up a messenger. The husband says to Ruvain, Ruvain, I want you to accept this divorce document on behalf of my wife. The wife doesn't know about this, right? It was before the internet, before phones. She doesn't know that she's getting divorced. But here's the question. What if this husband's on his deathbed and he doesn't have any children? and he knows that if he dies, his wife's going to have to do yibum with the brother, and maybe she doesn't want to do yibum with the brother. Can he, out of the interest of his wife, can he basically create, say to somebody to be a shaliach, to accept the get on his wife's behalf, unbeknownst to her, out of the concept of zachin l'adam shelo b'fanav, that you can cause merit to a person not in their presence. And therefore, says the Gemara, Ba'amine Rava me Rav Nachman, Rava asked a kasha from Rav Nachman, Amzaki get lishto b'makom yavam, mahu. What would be the halacha if this husband gives a get to some, shaliach that he puts together, to accept the get on behalf of his wife, unbeknownst to her, in order to prevent her from having to do yibum because she will be divorced? Kevin desanyale zchusula, do we say, look, she probably doesn't want to marry her brother-in-law, and therefore it's acceptable. V'zachin l'adam shelo b'fanav, and you can bring merit to a person not in their presence. So dilma kevin dezimin derachmale chovula, or do we say, look, maybe she does want to actually marry her brother-in-law, in which case it would be detrimental to her to divorce her without her knowing. Ve'ein chov l'adam shelo b'fanav, and you're not allowed to cause detriment to a fellow not in his presence. Amar le Tanina, so says Rav Nachman, look, our Mishnah says that we have to be concerned in a situation where he says, I can't remember, there's so many cases. What do we say? Right? We said in the Mishnah that if she goes on a trip with her son, and then she comes back and says that, or so meaning when she left, she wouldn't have to do yibum because they had a child. But she comes back and says that her son died and then her husband dies, which means at the time that her husband died, he didn't have any children, which means that now she has to do yibum. We said, well, we have to be concerned that maybe she's just doing it to be able to marry her brother-in-law, and therefore we say do chalitza rather than yibum. So we do see that actually there could be situations that we do have to be concerned for, situations where she is interested in marrying her brother-in-law, and therefore we can't just assume that it is beneficial to her to have this divorce, to be divorced like this. Ravina says to Rava, what if, can a person do this thing where he basically, accepts the get has a shaliach accept the get on behalf of his wife without her knowing? What if they were in a situation of a fight? Can you assume that if they were fighting, of course she would want to get divorced? They hate each other, they're fighting. So do we say, look, since they're fighting, she'd be happy to get a divorce from this fellow? Or maybe look, even if they're fighting, she would still rather be married. That Rish Lakish says that there's a saying among women that, look, better to have two people, to lie in bed with two people than to just be alone, right? So even if they're fighting, still better to be married than to be alone. Abai Omer says, Abai, the Shum Shimono Gavra, Kurse Vecharta Ramula, that even if a woman's husband is small like an ant, doesn't matter. She's married, she has a seat among the free women. Rav Papa Omer says, Rav Papa, Dinafzo Gavra, even if the husband, is a flax comber or something, not a job that may be unpleasant and have bad smells and stuff, nonetheless, Tikre B'Sefi Baba V'Tesiv, she'll still call him over to the entrance to the house and sit and schmooze with him. She doesn't care, she's happy. Rav Ashi Omer says, Rav Ashi, the Kulsa Gavra Lo Boya Talpache the Kidra, even if the fellow has questionable lineage, maybe not the best lineage, whatever it is, she doesn't care. She won't even ask him to buy lentils. She's just happy to be married. Tana, V'chulim Mizanas V'tolus B'valein, and then all of these women who dote on their husbands, who may not on the outside be the ideal partners, they all have relationship with other men and claim that the children that they bear are from the husbands. Okay, that was Daf Kuf Yud Ches of Masechta Yevamos. We had 4 Mishnayos, a whole bunch of stuff about people testifying about different cases. I gotta run. Peace out.